Darkcast Network, bringing our indie podcasts out of the shadows.
Just before we dive into this week's episode, here's a promo.
California has the largest population in the United States and the site of some of the most famous true crime cases in history. But there's more than meets the eye to the crime in California. Join Sean, Jessica, and Charles on the California True Crime Podcast as they cover crime both infamous and overlooked from around our state, while looking at the deeper history that goes beyond beaches and movie stars.
Hi, welcome to CrimeDivers. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jill.
Welcome back.
Hello everybody, thanks for joining us once again.
Yep, here we are with another episode for you to dive into with us.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called today, Jill?
The Beast of Blackburn.
The Beast of Blackburn.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we in Blackburn in England then?
Yeah. How do you know where Blackburn is?
The football team.
Oh, typical. Yes, we're in England, we're in the UK.
There is a Blackburn in Scotland somewhere.
Is there?
Yeah.
Well, we're in England.
We're in England, okay. Shall we dive in?
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Let's go.
Let's go. So Evie Adams was unfortunately born into an abusive family in 1996. So there was neglect and a lot of serious abuse factors, and her family were quite well known for getting into trouble with the police. So she was removed and she was placed into foster care. At 3 years old, she was fostered by a lovely family who didn't want to let her go, and they adopted her when she was 6, and they lived in Blackburn in England. So she was described as a bit of a daredevil. She would sing all the time, and she was such a happy child. She loved her adoptive parents, Bernard and Yvonne, and when she was older, she would say that they saved her, and like, where would she be without them? So,
yeah,
you know, she was obviously happy.
Nice.
We're adoptive family. When she was 15, she got a job in her family's pub, which had its advantages, as she used to steal beer for her and her best friend Holly, and they would like get drunk and go out.
Shocking behaviour, that.
But usually she was more a homebody. She used to like staying at home, just chilling out with family or her friends. So when she left school, she went to college and trained to be a hairdresser. At 16 years old, she knew what she wanted. She wanted a house of her own. She wanted a family of her own. You know, she had it all. All planned out. Yeah, she knew exactly what she wanted. And at 16-year-old, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
So she met a guy called Nathan, and her family said that he was a lovely lad. They would invite him round for dinner, and they all got on really well, and the relationship seemed to be a happy one. So Evie and Nathan soon moved in together, and I think Evie was about 17 at this point, and everybody had said like they were perfect for each other. Her family hadn't been happy at first about her moving out so young, because, well, I think any family's like that, you know, when they're moving out so young.
Of course.
But as I said, they liked Nathan, and it was working for them. They were independent, they were happy, all was good. So her family were proud of her.
Fair enough.
So a couple of years later, when Evie was 19, she fell pregnant. She was so happy, she was over the moon when she found out the baby was a girl. Her family were happy for her and couldn't wait to welcome the new baby to the world. But just as Evie went into labour, a close relative died.
Oh.
So, as you can imagine, when someone dies, the day a baby is born, there's going to be mixed emotions.
Of course there is, yeah.
Unfortunately, Evie suffered from postnatal depression, and her dad later said that they just weren't there for her when she needed them the most because they were grieving for this close relative. So, I mean, I totally get it.
I totally understand. Yeah, of course.
So Evie felt sort of isolated, and she really struggled, like in the first few weeks of being a new mum. Nathan was at work all day, and Evie stayed at home with the baby. Then when Nathan got home, he would take the baby around to his mum's, and Evie would again stay at home. So she spent a lot of time by herself, and it started to take her on a downward spiral.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this affected her relationship with Nathan,
right.
and they were arguing a lot, and eventually they decided to separate. So Evie's parents gave her money so that she could get her own place with the baby.
Mm-hmm.
So our friend Holly said that Evie didn't want to be on her own. She was scared of being a single mum.
Mm-hmm.
Not surprisingly, I think that's kind of quite a massive task for anybody to be a single parent.
Definitely.
She was worried about money and just about being alone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So she started using Tinder,
Mm-hmm.
and she went on a date with 28-year-old Jordan Monaghan. And after the date, she phoned Holly, her best pal, and told her that the date had gone well and Jordan seemed lovely. Holly was happy for her, but just kind of said, just be careful, take it slow.
Yeah.
But it wasn't long before he was at Evie's house all the time, and he actually had a bit of a reputation in the area. Like, people were always talking about him.
All right.
Like, he always had, like, pockets of money. Like, he would stand in the pub counting all the notes as if to say, look at me, I'm loaded. Like,
got wads of money.
Yeah,
I hate people that do that. There's like a particular guy that comes into my work, and every time he comes in, he obviously always pays cash, pulls out his big wad of money, and I'm like, really?
There's
like,
no need.
I don't care. Like,
No.
just pay me your £4 or whatever that you're buying. I don't need to see, like, I don't know, hundreds, thousands maybe in your hand. It's
No. Are you supposed to be impressed by that?
Well, it's almost like, I'm like...
To me, it's stupid. If you're carrying about that amount of money and people know it.
He comes in drunk quite a bit as well at night time, because he goes across to the pub across the road, and he'll come in and you know he's had a few, so... Sometimes I'm like, what if you get like that drunk and you could lose your money, or I don't know.
Or somebody can see you as an easy target. Oh, he's had a drink.
I think everybody knows everybody in the village that I work in, so it's like, why would you be so silly as to walk around with big wads of money in your hand?
Yeah.
But I mean, each their own. I just wouldn't be so silly.
Well, he was like that. He was like, yeah, look at me, I'm loaded. And his brother was the same.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a few businesses, and his brother had a construction business. They would put down like paving and driveways, but it didn't seem to make much sense, like how he had that much money. Like, that kind of money didn't just come from doing the construction work.
Where else did he earn his money from?
I don't know. I don't think you'll ever find out. I'm not. You can assume, but there's no point in assuming because
we don't actually know.
We don't know. But he had money and he was a twat about it.
Well, fair enough.
So Jordan seemed besotted with Evie. Like, he would spend loads of money on her. He could do whatever he could. He would do whatever he could to make her happy, and he was charming. And she just didn't want to hear what anyone else had to say about him. She was happy with him. He was good to her, and that's all that mattered. Which,
yeah, sometimes I agree that you have to be like that, because you can always have people's opinions about people, and if you listen to it too much, it can affect it.
I do think you have to make up your own mind.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and at that moment she was obviously very happy and very happy with the way things were going. It sounds alright at this point.
Yeah, he wasn't doing anything to her. And I think, like, to me, that's the way you have to learn. You can't just listen to other people. For instance, when I first started seeing John, a so-called friend of mine said, told me stuff like, he's a druggie, he does this, he does that, and it was totally untrue. And he's not into you, or I can't remember what else she said. But like, here we are, like 20 odd years later.
Yep, happily married. Never
seen him touch a drug in the time I've been with him. So.
No, exactly. The only vice he's got is he smokes too much.
So I think, I don't know, she was just jealous and didn't want me getting into a relationship with him, or I have no idea.
I don't know.
But
so sometimes
I can understand why she didn't want to listen to other people.
Yeah, because it can work out perfectly fine. Unfortunately, I'm going to assume in this instance maybe
he's a bad egg.
He is a bad egg, but unfortunately, you try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and
anyway, so he was well known in the community as somebody that you didn't really want to be with. He was a bit notorious in the area that he lived in. Evie's parents didn't know who he was. They hadn't heard of him, but when they asked other people about him, they would just be told that he was a bad un, and that was it. Like, no explanation, just that he was a bad un.
See, I always think, well, if you're going to call somebody that, can you back it up with something?
Yeah, give me an explanation.
Give me something like to go on there, because that could mean that you just don't like him, or I don't know, maybe he's just...
Or that could be like something that's started off as like, this guy has done one bad thing, and it's just kind of like spiraled. Chinese whispers kind of thing, and it's kind of spiraled into, he's a bad one. But in this case, he is. So.
But
So Holly, Evie's best friend, said that she thought there was something about him that was off. She did try to explain to Evie what she thought of Jordan, but she didn't want to know. She was smitten with him, and just, as I said before, she didn't want to hear any bad stuff about him. According to his ex-partner, she had found out that Jordan had a gambling addiction when they were together. So maybe that's where the water money are coming from.
Maybe been gambling and winning big on some stuff.
But you never win all the time.
Well, no, so you certainly lose a lot.
One of the local pub owners said that he saw Jordan put in maybe 400 or 500 quid in the bandit machines in one night. So as you can imagine, him and his ex regularly argued about money and gambling. So Evie's parents heard about the gambling and they thought that was bad enough, because they were like, no, that's not a good thing to have a gambling addiction. But then they heard a rumour about a man who murdered his children.
Oh.
Yes. Jordan had 2 children with his ex, and they had both died.
All right.
So Jordan was under investigation as both of the children had died when they were in his care.
Right, okay.
So one night, we'll get onto that later, in detail.
Yeah.
So one night, Evie and Jordan were in the pub with Holly, and someone walked up to Jordan and glassed him.
Oh, right.
Right, I think they glassed him in the face, and Holly had said to Evie, well, who was that? And Evie was like, well, that was Jordan's ex's cousin.
Right.
So, of course, Holly asked why he was being glassed, and Evie said that she didn't know.
Right, okay.
But Holly found out later it was actually the children's mum's cousin. Because Holly Evie had said it was just an ex, his cousin. Didn't know which ex. But it was the mum's cousin. Right. So Evie downplayed it by just saying, it's just one of his ex, when it was actually the mother of his children's cousin that he was under suspicion of killing. So that kind of makes it...
Yeah. I can understand why he's done that then.
Yeah. So when Evie's parents asked her about this rumour that Jordan had killed his children, she was like, oh, everyone says that about him. They've got him wrong. If he had done it, he would be in prison or whatever,
Which I'm thinking, yeah, but I mean...
You don't have to guess.
No.
It's all going to come out.
Yes,
so
okay.
I know what you're like when I'm telling you these cases. You're always... Your wee brains were in there trying to think, well, what's happened? Who did this? Who did that?
I know, I'm trying to finish the story before I've heard all the details.
Yeah. So by January 2018, George...
I don't understand.
Siri!
Seriously? Sorry, I was watching.
Yeah, I've had to unplug my Alexa because of that. Now we'll have to unplug your watch.
Totally.
So by January 2018, Jordan and Evie were getting closer, but she was becoming more distant with her family and friends. Her family noticed that she had changed. She was being secretive and lying about things. Her dad said that she lied so much that it just got to the point where he just didn't believe a word that was coming out of her mouth. And before Jordan, Evie and Holly were so close that they were like sisters, but now Evie would only phone Holly when she was at her parents' house.
Right, okay.
So it was obviously him,
Yeah, try to isolate her from friends and family.
Dr. Jessica Taylor, who's a forensic psychologist, said, quote, at this point, Evie is probably getting more and more isolated because she is seen to be voluntarily in this relationship with somebody who is being excluded from community and society because he's suspected of murdering children, end quote. So, you've got these rumours going about. She's in this relationship with him, so it's going to affect her as well. People aren't going to want to speak to her and all the rest of it. That kind of guilty by association kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So as I said, he was under investigation, and in January 2018, Jordan was arrested on suspicion of the murder of his 2 children, but unfortunately without enough evidence to charge him, he was released on bail as the police continued to investigate the deaths of the children. So the police did warn Evie. They went to her house and told her, look, you and your child are at risk.
Right, okay.
But for whatever reason, she chose to ignore the warning. And the police were so concerned that they actually, I don't know where they took her, but they took her to a place of safety and told her, look, you're not safe with this man.
Right.
And there were actually restraining orders issued to keep Jordan away from Evie, even though Evie didn't want the restraining orders.
Right, okay.
But the police were that concerned about her that they were putting restraining orders into place.
Right, okay.
But she couldn't keep away from him. She didn't want to. And other people noticed the unusual dynamic between them. Like Holly said that Evie wouldn't get up and dance like usually she would get up, bit of life and soul of the party. She'd be up dancing on a night out, but if Jordan was there, she wouldn't get up and dance.
Right, okay.
She had to be by his side the whole night. And even the bar staff at their local noticed that Evie wasn't allowed to do anything. Like, she couldn't go off and dance or go and chat to other people.
So what's the point in her sitting there?
She had to be by Jordan's side the whole time.
That sounds a bit rubbish.
So Holly said that Jordan had gone from this charming, I'll do anything for you kind of person to you'll do anything I tell you to do and you'll like it kind of person. So before, he'd always been really nice and kind, but now he was always angry and he was always shouting at Evie. But as Holly said, quote, it was too late for her, she was already in love with him, end quote. So in January 2019, police again attempted to help Evie. There was a restraining order in place at this time, and the police stopped Jordan in the car. I don't know why he was stopped, but he had Evie in the passenger seat.
Right.
And when the police asked who she was, he said, "Oh, that's just some bird that I've just met."
Really?
But they knew who she was. Like
yeah.
Maybe that's why he was stopped in the first place. He maybe saw him with a girl. I don't know. But he was actually charged with the breach of the restraining order, and he got a 12-week suspended sentence for it.
Right, okay.
And that actually triggered another intervention from social services this time. So they visited her house and basically told her that she had to keep Jordan away from her daughter. So by this time, Evie's parents were just so worried and wanted her away from him. So they said to her, "Why don't you just move to another town? Don't tell anyone where you are. We'll come over every day. Like, we'll support you. You won't be alone."
Yeah.
But Evie just wouldn't do it. She was just staying with him.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks later, Evie phoned Holly and said, "I've just lost my child." Social services had taken her daughter off her because when they visited, Jordan was there. Yeah. So Evie's daughter went to stay at her parents' house, and Evie was allowed a supervised visit with her daughter twice a week.
Right.
But when she showed up, like, she would have like bruises on her arms, and when asked where they came from, she would say that she fell, and obviously nobody believed her.
No, we know very well what's happened.
Yeah. So there were financial pressures on the relationship as well. So one night, Evie's dad, he had went to the pub, and his friend told him that Jordan had been sacked from his job because people had been phoning the company that he worked for saying that he was a murderer.
Oh, right.
So
they just got fed up with him and said...
Well, they said for his own safety, they let him go. But I'm thinking it was probably for their own safety. They're thinking...
They probably did have their reputation damaged as well.
Yeah. So Evie wasn't paying her rent, and she was evicted and ended up in a homeless shelter. Are you going to start choking? You okay? Yeah. That's what you get for taking a drink of fizzy juice when we're trying to record a podcast. Just as well as my episode and no yours.
I know, right, go, sorry.
Yeah, so Evie ended up in a homeless shelter. So, but at this point, she tried to get away from Jordan, and she wanted her daughter back. So she moved 50 miles away to a women's refuge, but he wasn't giving up without a fight. He found where she was by tracking her phone, and he would follow her, like 50 miles away. He would travel, and he would wait till she was out and about, because women's refuges, they're usually like nobody knows where they are.
Aye, they're supposed
so he must have just known the area that she was in, and he's like waited for her and followed her when she's been out and about. And like Holly, she told Holly, and Holly said like phone the police, but Evie said that she didn't want to take it that far. So Jordan accused Holly of being with other men, because that's the only reason that he could understand why she didn't want to be with him. He couldn't understand it was because he was abusive and he was gambling and whatever else. It was because she was with other men.
So basically he was trying to make it out like it was her fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Not his fault. He just wouldn't take blame for his actions.
He just couldn't understand why do you not want to be with me? You must be with other men then.
Yeah, it's kind of obvious.
Yeah.
Mate.
But she was adamant she wasn't going back to him. So one day the police were called as he was standing on a rooftop in Preston, threatening to jump because Evie wouldn't have anything to do with him. And unfortunately, that tactic worked, and she went back to him. So whether that was from feeling guilty or if she thought he really did love her and could change, I don't know. But of course, the relationship just went back to the way it had been before.
As always.
Yeah. Jordan was controlling Evie and isolating her from the outside world. He would use her childhood, like from before being fostered, to completely undermine her self-esteem, saying things like you'd never be worth anything because of what happened to you when you were younger, and you might as well be with me because nobody else will have you, and things like that. And she had gone from a happy, bubbly person to a lost soul, as Holly described her, as a lost soul. Seriously, you're going to start having a choking fit?
No, I'm trying not to.
I'm just going to put my hand over her mouth in a minute. So she had been beaten down so much that she just wasn't Evie anymore.
Mm-hmm.
On the 11th of October 2019, Evie and Jordan went for a weekend away to Blackpool with their friends Kimberly Edwards and Jamie Rashid. Unfortunately, though, Jordan became aggressive, he was argumentative and punched a wall, and was obviously just being a complete and utter dickhead.
Sounds like it.
Kimberly and Jamie saw Jordan giving Evie tablets out of a brown glass bottle, saying they were painkillers.
Mm-hmm.
But they thought it was a bit odd because tablets don't come in those bottles anymore.
No.
Like, we get them in, like, the blister packs now. I mean, when did we, in the UK, when did we used to get, I
don't ever recall any.
A long time ago.
Anything but the
blister packs, yeah. So, yeah, that was a bit strange, having painkillers in a brown glass bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I hated them. I could never get them open.
Mm-hmm.
The child locks. So when they got back from Blackpool, Evie ended the relationship and she began looking for a friend. A friend? No. She began looking for a flat to rent in Blackburn, but they got back together, and must have been staying together at this point. They must have found somewhere to live, and they're in the same place. Jordan joined a WhatsApp group called UK Tablets.
Okay.
And he was asking for gabapentin, zopiclone, and diazepam. So these tablets can be used for pain relief, but in large doses, they can be extremely dangerous, like changing people's behaviours, their resolve, their determination, their whole characters, really.
Right, okay.
Within a couple of days, Evie wasn't feeling very well. And she didn't even feel well enough to leave the house, which is what Jordan wanted. So,
she's been in the house, stuck in the house.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's obviously feeding her tablets.
Yeah. So, like, she couldn't see other people. She was just with him. That's where he wanted her. So Evie's family were really worried, and she told her dad that she was feeling really sick and that she'd looked up her symptoms online and she thought that she had stomach flu. Mm-hmm. So her dad said, right, well, I'll come and get you and I'll take you to the doctors. Mm-hmm. But Evie's like, no, it's fine. I've already made an appointment. Mm-hmm. So she texted Jordan saying, I feel like I'm dying. And he had phoned the doctor's surgeon and made an appointment for her. But Jordan said that he couldn't take her to the appointment, so she didn't go. So...
But her dad could have taken her.
Yeah. The following day, the 21st of October 2019, Jordan called 111, which is the non-emergency medical helpline, and told them that Evie had been vomiting and feeling dizzy for 4 days, and an appointment was made for her to see a doctor, but again she didn't turn up.
Right.
And there were also return calls from the 111 service, but they were ignored. They never picked up. So then the following day, Evie texted her friend saying, Jordan keeps stressing, but he won't let me see a doctor. But funnily enough, Jordan actually phoned 111 again after that. So I think he's seen her phone and seen that she's telling her friends that he's not helping her. So he's like, oh, okay. So he phoned 111 again and told them that Evie was having abdominal pain, but yet 2 return calls were ignored. So he wasn't letting her see a doctor, but as soon as she told anyone that and explained how ill she was, he turned into the loving boyfriend saying, I'll sort it, I'll call the doctor, so that no one else would do it for her. Yeah. So she wasn't actually getting to see a doctor.
Is she still not getting to see a freaking doctor? Or do their friends now think she has seen the doctor?
Well, maybe they've decided, because she's saying, oh no, it's fine, Jordan's going to take me, so they're maybe thinking that she is seeing a doctor.
Maybe.
So poor Evie, she was deteriorating, and Jordan was giving her tablets that he said would help her, so she thought that he was helping her, but she was just feeling worse and worse. So she must have been absolutely terrified, wondering what was happening to her.
Yeah, totally. Not even getting any help. But
and when Evie missed her visit with her daughter, that's when her parents knew she must be seriously ill, because she'd never missed an appointment with her daughter. So the forensic psychologist Jessica Taylor, she said, quote, the state that Evie would have been in because of the amount of sedative drug that she's been given, it's likely that she wouldn't have known what she was taking or how many she'd taken in a day, end quote. So he would have been giving her God knows what, and she wouldn't have known any different by this point. No. But then Evie's mum got a text saying that from Evie saying that she'd left stuff outside her front door. So her mum was really happy because she's like, oh, Evie must be feeling better because she's out the house.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why, but I'm kind of confused as to why she would text her to say she'd left stuff outside the front door. Why would she just not knock on the front door?
Yeah.
Or maybe she wasn't, because she only had supervised visits with her daughter at certain times, that would seem okay for her just to knock on the door.
Yeah, maybe.
Because it was not at her supervised time. I don't know.
Maybe.
And she's like, yeah, she left stuff outside the front door. So she went and had a look, and it was a wicker basket. It had bits and pieces for her daughter, like colouring stuff and little toys and stuff like that for her daughter. But what they didn't know until later, because they assumed that Evie had done that, but what they didn't know until later, when they checked the CCTV, it wasn't Evie who had left the basket. It was a girl that they didn't even recognise.
Oh, right.
So when they realised that wasn't Evie, they must have realised that wasn't Evie that text, because the text said that she herself had dropped it off. So they're like, what the hell? What's going on?
Uh-huh.
But at the time, this was obviously just something Jordan planned to keep Evie isolated. So because as I said, they didn't find out till later that it wasn't Evie.
Yeah.
So while Evie's isolated in the house, they're thinking, oh, she's all right. She's out and about and she's texting us. And
yeah, so she was fine, yeah.
So Jordan, he knew what he was doing.
Oh, totally.
And, so that our parents wouldn't be worrying about her and coming to check on her. So that's obviously what he was doing. So Holly hadn't spoken to Evie for about 2 months. I mean, this is her best friend. She was like a sister to her. And she tried to call her one day, but she didn't answer. Evie then texted her and said she couldn't talk right now and she would phone her when she was at her parents' house, but that phone call never came. My chair keeps squeaking. Let's sit forward. In the 10 days since Evie first said that she was feeling ill, she hadn't seen a doctor, and during this time she had unknowingly taken a combination of prescription drugs, as we know, given to her by Jordan. And when she sent Jordan that message saying that she felt like she was dying, she didn't know that the purpose of those drugs was to suppress her system. So her heart rate was probably really low and her breathing would have slowed down. So she really would have felt like she was dying as everything was shutting down. Oh, wow. So when you say to somebody, I feel like I'm dying, she actually was.
Yeah, that's horrible.
So on the 24th of October 2019, whilst at work, Jordan got a text message from Evie saying, quote, I've taken the drugs and I don't want to be here anymore and I don't want help, end quote. So he called his aunt and asked her to go round to the house to check on Evie, and his aunt went and called an ambulance. So Jordan arrived shortly after, and police and the paramedics were there, and he was putting on the act of the devastated boyfriend by crying in front of them. He handed over the blister packs of the medication. He thought that this is what she's probably taken. What of course he didn't tell him was that he had taken Evie's phone to work with him. And text that message from her phone to him. Yeah. So that night at 10:10, a police sergeant knocked at Evie's parents' door and told them that Evie had taken her own life. But her family and friends struggled to understand what had happened. They said there was no way that she would have left her daughter, and they just knew that in some way Jordan was to blame. So despite initial evidence suggesting suicide, after just 24 hours, police were sure that Evie hadn't taken her own life and that she had been murdered. Of course, Jordan is the prime suspect, but the police had no evidence to charge him. So as the police were trying to piece together what had happened to Evie, Jordan was back to his own ways. He was like drinking, gambling down the local pub.
Like nothing had happened.
Yeah, he made new friends after Evie's death, and he acted like the grieving partner, told them how Evie hadn't been well and that she'd taken her own life. And, of course they were giving him sympathy because, that imagine somebody saying, "Oh, my girlfriend took her own life." I mean,
of course you believe that. Yeah. Of course, yeah.
But even in her death, he was like trying to control what happened to Evie. He tried to stop her family making funeral arrangements.
How?
I don't know the ins and outs of it, but he went to a solicitor, and because he was waiting for certain decisions to be made, they couldn't have the funeral till a month later.
Right.
No idea.
I don't think he should have had no say in that whatsoever.
Well, exactly.
They weren't married.
No.
Just a boyfriend and girlfriend. Yeah. That gives you no rights. They didn't have kids together or anything, so...
No. So I don't know how he managed to do that. But then he threatened to turn up at the funeral and firebomb the place.
Oh.
I'm like, what? You're saying, you're letting on that you're the grieving boyfriend...
Yeah.
Why have you turned and said that you're going to firebomb the place?
Well, exactly. Surely you would be wanting to attend and pay your respects to your girlfriend that has just committed suicide, and you were very upset about it, apparently.
So Evie's family actually had her body moved to a different town because they were scared that he would break into. Is it? I don't know. I don't know where to keep a body till the funerals. Do they keep it in the morgue or in the funeral home or wherever?
I think they kept in once they moved to the funeral homes. Then it's
wherever she was anyway. Wherever she was being, her body was being kept. They were scared that he was going to turn up and do something to her body.
Yeah.
Like maybe steal it or something. So imagine having to do that. That's absolutely awful.
That's crazy.
Our family were determined to keep Jordan away from the funeral, so he asked a mutual friend if they would put a photo in Evie's coffin.
Right.
So the friend was like, right, okay, and went over to Jordan's house to get the photo. But when Jordan picked up the frame, because the photo that he wanted to put in, it was in a frame, so he picked up the frame to take the photo out of it, and a suicide note just popped out of this frame. Like, what a coincidence.
Oh, what a coincidence that is, yeah.
Yeah. And like, I know this seems a bit strange anyway. I mean, why would Evie have hidden a suicide note in a photo frame? But that's not even the strangest part. Why would she hide it in a frame at Jordan's parents' house?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say...
Not even at her house, or where she was living with Jordan.
She wasn't even at his parents' house, as far as we're aware here, so... Why would she have done it there? I would more sense to find a photo at her own house with a suicide note and that. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even believe that for a second.
No. So Jordan had obviously set this all up to be like, oh look, I didn't know that was there. But why was it not in his house? Or her house? Like, it doesn't make sense. A suicide note would be at his parents' house.
No,
it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Totally.
So handwriting experts were brought in to try and make sense of this new evidence while Evie's funeral went ahead. The police guarded the funeral and the week afterwards to make sure that Jordan didn't turn up. But I'm like, I see, this is what I'm getting. Like, if you killed her and you're trying to act like she's committed suicide, why are you causing all this hassle?
Well, exactly.
Why are you not acting like the devastated boyfriend?
Yeah, like, be quiet.
Be quiet.
But I mean, he just seems to be getting in everybody's faces and like doing the whole suicide. No, that's just drawing more attention to the fact that actually you're the one who's killed her. When if you want to get away with it, then you'd obviously do the grieving boyfriend.
Yeah, of course. It's just an arsehole.
Oh, totally.
Stupid arsehole like that.
Aye, very much so.
So then Evie's toxicology report came back, and there was concerns about the level of drugs in her system. So the report stated that the opiate levels in Evie's blood were the equivalent of taking 20 tramadol. And basically, obviously people, I mean, I don't know about things like that. So if anyone took more than 2 tramadol, you would feel unwell. That's how strong they are.
Okay.
So in her blood, it was the equivalent of taking 20 tramadol.
Wow.
So now they know what had caused Evie's death, but they still needed to find proof of who caused it. Jordan set up a company in Evie's name,
right,
which apparently he used to rip people off. Like, obviously nobody knew it at the time, but his new friends said that he always had wads of cash in his pockets and he was always offering them a loan and money if they needed it, and they were like, oh, he's a great guy, he's always up for a drink and a laugh, and not playing the grieving boyfriend.
Nope.
One day in August 2020, the police visited one of his friends. Her name's Sue. This is one of the new friends that he'd made since Evie's death. They told her to make sure that she didn't let him near any children, and she was absolutely shocked by this. She's like, "What? Why? What's going on?" And they're like, "Well, do you know about Jordan's children?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, he had 2 children, and they died about 6 years ago." And he had told her that it was a genetic condition that they had died from. Right. So she had no reason not to believe him. I mean, it
could be believable.
Exactly. So, you can see why people who didn't know him wouldn't have been suspicious of him if he was telling them that his children had died from a genetic condition 6 years ago, and then his partner took her own life recently.
You wouldn't doubt it, would you? You would take it for what it is, face value. You'd be like, all right, okay, if that's so sad, tragic, all the rest of it,
These things happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
unfortunately. So police were closing in. Detective got 12 experts from a wide range of disciplines to look at not just Evie's death, but also the death of Jordan's 2 children.
Right.
So nearly a year after Evie passed, police had a major breakthrough. They had examined Jordan's phone and managed to get to all the deleted stuff and found the WhatsApp group and his messages to them. So they've seen like the drugs that he's ordered match up with the drugs that were in Evie's system. So it was obvious, it was obvious what happened.
Yeah, of course. But you still need to prove it, obviously.
Well, Jordan was rearrested in January 2021, and he was charged with Evie's death and also the deaths of his 2 children. Now, I don't actually know how they figured out how he killed the children. I don't know. As I said, like the case that I was reading about was mainly about Evie. So, but I will tell you what happened to them. So, just a trigger warning that the next bit is about babies' deaths. So, if anybody doesn't want to listen to that, skip forward a bit. Totally understandable. So, Jordan started seeing a girl called Laura Gray back in 2008. So, Laura was actually friends with Jordan's sister. So they'd known each other since they were kids. And Laura had always had a massive crush on him. Jordan proposed to her when she was 16. He got a job in construction, she got a job in a care home, and everything was all good. They were going to get married, have kids, live happily ever after. On the 11th of November 2011, their son Logan was born, and Laura had everything she ever wanted. She loved being a mum, she had this beautiful little boy, and Jordan appeared to be a doting dad. So Laura described Logan as her dream child. He was perfect, he was happy, there was no concerns whatsoever about his health, and from the outside they were a happy little family. But behind closed doors, the issue of money was causing cracks in the relationship. Then Laura fell pregnant again, and shortly after she found out about the gambling and that he hadn't been paying the rent. So that's when she was like, right, relationship's over.
Yeah, we're done.
But on that same day, she told him that they were done, but that's this was the 23rd of September 2012. Logan was rushed to hospital, so he would have been about 10 months old.
Right, okay.
And Jordan told the doctors that a packet of paracetamol had been left near him and he had eaten them. But when Logan was checked over, there was no overdose. So I think Jordan must have just done that to give Laura a scare so that she wouldn't leave him.
Right, okay,
and she didn't. So it worked. So their daughter Ruby was born on the 8th of December 2012, and on the 28th of December, so like 20 days later, Laura was upstairs and Jordan screamed for her to come downstairs. He had Ruby in his arms and she was completely lifeless.
Right.
So Laura called an ambulance and Ruby was rushed to hospital. She was kept in for 3 days under observation, and then she was released on New Year's Eve. And it wasn't known what had caused Ruby's breathing to be restricted. So that night, the couple saw in the new year together. Then just after midnight, Laura went to bed, and Jordan said that he would stay up to give Ruby her 2 a.m. bottle. But later, Laura was woken up by screams coming from Jordan downstairs because Ruby wasn't breathing. So she was again rushed to hospital, but at just 24 days old, she was pronounced dead on arrival.
God, that's awful.
So a routine police investigation did follow, which meant that both Laura and Jordan were interviewed, but Ruby's death was ruled as natural causes, being acute bronchial pneumonia.
Right.
Or bronchial, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce that. But what had in fact happened, as it was found out later in court, was that Jordan had held his hand over Ruby's mouth and pinched her nose until she stopped breathing.
Oh.
But that wasn't found out till all these 6-7 years later or whatever. So, obviously this after she died, it was through natural causes. So after Ruby's death, the couple became closer and stronger, and Laura became more and more reliant on Jordan. But that only lasted for a little while because the money issues again started causing problems in their relationship. She found out that again he hadn't been paying the rent. He had a separate bank account that she didn't know about.
Oh, right.
There was just like loads of unpaid bills. So again, she told him the relationship's over. But I'm assuming they must have stayed in the same house because of what happened the next day.
Right. Okay.
So this that was the 16th of August 2013, and the next day she wasn't feeling very well. So she asked Jordan to take Logan out, just so she could maybe have a nap or whatever, and he took him to the local swimming pool.
Right.
So when Jordan and Logan got home, he left Logan in his buggy and he told Laura to go and wake him up while he went out to get pizza. So he left, and Laura said that as soon as she uncovered her son, she knew he was dead. She called an ambulance and she tried CPR, but when the paramedics arrived, 21-month-old Logan was pronounced dead.
Jesus Christ. Oh.
So the coroner ruled his death as unascertained. So Laura never suspected that Jordan had done anything, and the relationship continued. But obviously they split up at some point down the line for good. But what had actually happened was that Jordan had went to the swimming pool. He paid to get in because you see him on the CCTV. So he paid to get in, and him and Logan went into one of the changing cubicles, and they remained there for 27 minutes. Logan was definitely alive before they went into the cubicle because he could be seen on CTV like moving around in his buggy. But when Jordan walked out of the building 27 minutes later, so they only went into the cubicle for 27 minutes, then came back out, so they never actually went to the swimming pool. So when 27 minutes later, Logan couldn't be seen in his buggy as there was a rain cover over it.
Right.
So Jordan must have suffocated him in the changing cubicle. Took him home and deliberately went out for pizza so that Laura would find her son dead.
Only, I mean, again, it would be very difficult in that moment because there would have been a mass panic about him being dead, but you would wonder if now looking back, would she have noticed the fact that maybe, you know, I don't know, once you've been at the swimming pool, your hair's wet, isn't it? So...
Not really. Depends how, if you walked back.
Well, it depends how far you are away from
a little kid's not going to have much hair. A man's doesn't have much hair.
I suppose.
Remember we used to go swimming, by the time we got back to my house, my hair was dry.
I suppose.
But she wouldn't have been thinking of that anyway, because she would have been totally panicked that her son had died. So in October 2021, Jordan Monaghan appeared at Preston Crown Court. The handwriting expert said that the handwriting of Evie's suicide note was nothing like Evie's writing, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And with the other evidence, he of course was found guilty of murdering 23-year-old Evie Adams. He was also found guilty of murdering his 21-month-old son, Logan, and his 24-days-old daughter, Ruby. 30-year-old Jordan was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 40 years.
Good.
Evie's family set up a memorial garden, and her daughter sits and talks to her.
Aww. And
when she sees a butterfly go past, she tells her granddad that her mummy has just been watching her.
Aww. That gives me the chills.
I know. So basically, Jordan murdered when his relationships were ending.
Yeah.
He knew that Evie wanted out of that relationship, so he killed her.
Yeah. It was almost like the typical, if I can't have you, no one can, or I'm going to punish you for wanting to leave me by killing the kids and stuff.
Well, that's it. I mean, like when Laura wanted to split up with him, he killed the kids. He killed one kid. Then they got back together. They stayed together, but then once it started, the cracks were showing, and she wanted to split up with him again.
Yeah,
he killed the other one.
Honestly, that's despicable.
That is absolutely...
I hope he rots in bloody jail.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't deserve to ever get out of jail.
And that's why I called it the Beast of Blackburn, because that's not even I wouldn't even know what to call him, actually.
No.
There's no words bad enough
probably not,
to call him what he was. I mean, that's just those poor Evie, poor children, all because of him.
Yeah, but for what? Because he wanted the control, or
yeah, I think so. I think he wasn't getting what he wanted. He wanted the relationship with Evie. He had her in a controlling relationship, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But then she didn't want to be in that, so it was like, well, no, you're not leaving. Why? How dare you leave me?
Yeah. I'm gonna do something to you so that you can't leave me. And...
Exactly. And when with Laura and the children, I mean, I don't know why he would take it out on the children though.
Well, I know. I mean, innocent.
I get that he's punishing her.
I know, but not at the expense of his children's life. Jesus Christ!
I know. Absolutely horrendous.
There are just some really despicable people that walk this earth, I tell you.
Definitely.
Like, humans, there are a lot of evil human beings. The human race is...
despicable.
At times. And
that's why I don't like people.
No, same.
They're just horrible.
No, we're not all horrible. There's a lot of nice people in the world, but there's certainly a lot of evil monsters in the world, sadly.
They definitely walk among us.
They definitely do.
So thank you to everybody for listening, and we'll be back next week.
See you later. Bye.
If you'd like to get in contact with us or follow us on our social media, we are on Instagram and Twitter at crime_divers_pod. You can email us at crime_divers_pod@outlook.com. We're on YouTube, and that's Crime Divers Podcast, and TikTok is also Crime Divers Podcast. If you would like to financially support the show, you could go to www.buymeacoffee.com/crimedivers and make a one-off donation. Our Patreon is patreon.com/crimedivers. We have 3 tiers. which is £1, £3 or £5, and you get bonus episodes, early access to episodes and ad-free episodes.
And if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review.